Imagine living thousands of years ago, in a world without police stations, modern courts, prisons, or forensic science. If someone stole your food, attacked another person, or murdered a member of your community, who would punish them? Ancient societies had their own systems of justice. But these systems could be very different from what we consider fair today. Some punishments were surprisingly organized. Others were extremely harsh. So, how did ancient humans punish criminals? To understand this, we need to travel back thousands of years. One of the earliest known civilizations with written laws was ancient Mesopotamia. Around the 18th century BCE, the Babylonian king Hammurabi created one of the most famous law codes in history. The Code of Hammurabi contained hundreds of laws covering theft, property, trade, family disputes, assault, and many other crimes. One important idea was that punishment should sometimes match the crime. This is where the famous concept often summarized as an eye for an eye comes from. For example, if one person seriously injured another, the law could prescribe a similar injury as punishment. But there was an important complication. Punishments could depend on a person's social status. A crime committed against a wealthy or high-status person could sometimes receive a different punishment than the same crime committed against someone of lower status. So ancient justice was not necessarily equal for everyone. In ancient Egypt, punishment was also connected to maintaining order. Egyptian society placed great importance on a concept called ma'at, which represented order, balance, truth, and justice. Criminals could face physical punishments, forced labor, imprisonment, or even death, depending on the crime. The ancient Egyptians also used beatings and other forms of corporal punishment. For serious offenses, execution could be ordered, but punishment was not always about hurting someone. In many ancient societies, forcing a criminal to work could serve two purposes: punishment and labor. A person could be sent to difficult work such as mining, construction, farming, or other dangerous tasks. This meant that punishment could also provide labor for the state. Now let's travel to ancient Greece. Greek city-states developed different systems of justice. Athens is particularly famous because citizens could participate directly in legal decisions. There were courts, juries, prosecutors, and defendants. But the punishments could still be severe. Depending on the crime, a person might be fined, lose their rights as a citizen, be exiled, or face death. One famous punishment was ostracism. This was not exactly a criminal punishment in the modern sense. Citizens could vote to exile a politically powerful person from Athens for a period of years. The person usually had to leave the city, but did not necessarily lose their property. It was a way for the community to remove someone considered dangerous to the political system. Ancient Rome later developed one of the most influential legal systems in history. Roman law covered everything from property and contracts to theft and violence. Punishments depended heavily on the crime and the social status of the accused. Fines, confiscation of property, exile, forced labor, and imprisonment could all be used. For serious crimes, execution was possible. But some executions were designed not only to kill the criminal, but also to frighten everyone watching. Public punishment served as a warning. People were supposed to see what happened to criminals and think twice before breaking the law. This brings us to one of the most common purposes of ancient punishment: deterrence. Ancient rulers did not have modern surveillance systems, police forces, or prisons capable of holding large populations. Instead, harsh and visible punishments could help governments maintain control. If everyone knew that theft, rebellion, or murder could result in severe consequences, rulers hoped people would be less likely to commit those crimes. But not every ancient society relied on physical punishment. Some communities used social punishment. A person could be expelled from the community. This could be extremely dangerous in ancient times. People depended heavily on their families and communities for food, protection, shelter, and survival. Being forced to live alone could mean losing access to these essential resources. In some societies, a criminal could also lose their social status, property, or legal rights. Reputation mattered enormously. A person who became known as a thief or traitor could find it difficult to rebuild their life. Another interesting method was compensation. Instead of simply punishing the criminal, some ancient legal systems required the offender to pay the victim. The payment could involve money, livestock, goods, or other valuable property. This approach could help repair the damage caused by a crime. However, Ancient justice was often very different from modern ideas about human rights. There were few protections that we would consider standard today. People could receive harsh punishments. Some could be punished based on their social class. And in certain societies, people could suffer severe consequences without the kind of evidence standards and legal protections expected in modern courts. There was also another major difference. Ancient governments often saw punishment as a way to protect the entire social order, not just to punish an individual. A crime was viewed as something that could disturb the balance of the community. That is why crimes against rulers, temples, or the state could receive especially severe punishments. Rebellion and treason were often treated as extremely serious offenses. So, what can we learn from ancient punishments? First, humans have been creating rules for thousands of years. Second, every society has had to answer the same basic question. What should happen when someone breaks those rules? The answers have changed dramatically over time. Ancient societies used fines, compensation, exile, forced labor, physical punishment, imprisonment, and execution. Some punishments were intended to repair the damage. Others were designed to frighten people. And some were meant simply to remove dangerous individuals from society. Modern justice systems have changed considerably, focusing more on evidence, legal rights, proportional punishment, rehabilitation, and protection of society. But the basic problem remains surprisingly similar. Someone breaks the rules. Someone is harmed. And society must decide what justice should look like. Thousands of years ago, that decision could be made by a king, a council, a court, or the community. Today, it is handled through complex legal systems. The technology has changed. The laws have changed. But one question has remained with humanity for thousands of years. What is the fairest way to punish someone who has done wrong?